What's up, everybody? Thanks again for joining me on our next episode of In the Pink. And if you are not familiar with what that term means, that is a term coined way back in the 1500s, before pink was even a color. And it had to do with wishing someone optimum health and happiness. So this week we are talking about gut health, and we are filling in that blank with thyroid function. But first, we're always gonna start out with a what we know. So my first what we know that thyroid disorders affect about 1 out of every 5 women and 1 out of every 10 men. But wait, there's more. In women, it actually will affect 1 out of 8 in their lifetime due to things like pregnancy or menopause and even stress. And my second what we know that thyroid even plays into digestive issues. So when our thyroid is imbalanced, it can cause symptoms. So things like constipation, bloating, diarrhea, irritable bowels, just to name a few. And my third what we know that thyroid imbalance can either be high or it can be low, right? But hypothyroidism or low thyroid, or Hashimoto's as it's been termed formally, is all about our thyroid not producing enough that our body needs to function properly. And these symptoms of a low thyroid are very vague, so many of these instances even go undiagnosed. And it just so happens this low thyroid or Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease. It has to do with our immune system, and it also has to do with inflammation because it's all related. And wouldn't you know that about 80% of our immune system is housed in the gut? Shocker, I know. And my last what we know, we're gonna do a little review of how the thyroid works in the first place, so you have a better groundwork laid when we get into the gut relationship. So our thyroid is a gland located around our throat area, and it makes thyroid hormones. So TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, that is produced in our brain. Now that one is responsible for figuring out if our body is deficient or if it's overproducing and trying to get our body manufacturing what it needs. Now T4 is produced in this thyroid gland, and it's produced from a thyroglobulin protein. Now T4 is actually inactive. It doesn't do anything. It has to be activated to T3. And even though this T3 only accounts for about 7% of these thyroid hormones we're talking about, it does all the work. So it stimulates our metabolism, and of course our metabolism is tied into basically all our bodily functions. And wouldn't you know that about 20% of this conversion from this T4 to the active T3 happens in our gut? Another shocker, I know. All right, it's time. Let's move on to the gut's role. Let's move on to the relationship between the gut and our thyroid. Well, if we back it up just a little bit, like I just said, the immune system plays into this as well. So the way our immune system works is to protect us, right? It manufactures antibodies to get rid of proteins that it's flagged for destruction. However, there is something that can happen where these proteins that our body should be protecting versus the proteins that our body should be flagging for destruction mimic one another, where those amino acids are so similar, our body can't tell the difference. And this is this autoimmune business I'm talking about. So when our body starts to attack the cells it should not be attacking, this causes inflammation. It's once again all tied together. Now let's look at one more thing here, leaky gut. We know that leaky gut occurs when our gut lining, which should be protecting our body from what is passing through, right? And absorbing nutrients it should, and eliminating what our body is not going to be using, what happens is the integrity of this lining is compromised to the point of proteins exiting this lining and getting out into our system where they shouldn't be. And of course, then the immune system goes in to take care of those things that it does not recognize that are considered foreign. And again, this causes inflammation. And over time, the body is going to create antibodies to take care of these proteins that it sees as foreign. And it creates this cascade of destruction against the thyroid tissue, resulting in this Hashimoto's and eventually hypothyroidism. All right, now let's go over just some potential causes for this leaky gut. Well, there can be some drugs that do this. So non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, things like Motrin or Advil, birth control pills, and antibiotics. They obviously disrupt our normal microbiome flora. Okay, let's move away from drugs. Chronic stress, that's a big one. And our diet always plays into this. So high sugar diets are going to be detrimental to our well-being as a whole. Also low fiber diets, because these fibers are what is feeding our good bacterial flora. Do you see where I'm going with all this? Gut health is a big deal. Okay, let's move on from leaky gut. The next one would be this conversion I'm talking about of taking place in our gut. So if your gut's not functioning properly, yes, you can experience some of these vague symptoms that are related to your thyroid. Low thyroid specifically, even if your thyroid gland is healthy. All right, the next thing, this gut inflammation that I'm talking about can inhibit our active thyroid hormone. So think of it this way, if we have a healthy microbiome, it is regulating inflammation by inhibiting pro-inflammatory cytokines. And you don't need to know a lot about it, but these cytokines are basically protein-based substances that are secreted by our immune system. And they communicate these cell-to-cell responses. So the more of these cytokines that we have proliferating in our bodies and going unchecked, the more inflammation our body is going to be dealing with. All right, the next one, constipation. Constipation, you guys, can actually reduce thyroid hormone. Constipation alone is going to cause hormone imbalances, even with estrogen, in addition to thyroid. But basically, it just makes this thyroid hormone become unavailable for our body to utilize. And on the flip side, when we have low levels of thyroid circulating in our system, that causes impaired motility. And this just perpetuates itself, right? It's circular in motion every time. And just one more example of why this gut function is crucial in having these appropriate hormone levels available. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to some healthy practices, some things that we can do on a daily basis to improve our entire health picture, which includes our thyroid. All right, first thing, diet. We always start with diet. It's easy to look at diet and make some changes. So we want to be thinking of top allergens and removing them at least temporarily from our diet. So things like gluten, dairy, soy, nuts, including peanuts, and even stimulants. So things that would be containing caffeine, coffee, tea, chocolates. Again, temporary, but then take note of your symptoms and see where you are at. Second thing, unnecessary medications, okay? So proton pump inhibitors, these NSAIDs that I just covered now, any type of unnecessary antibiotics, and even birth control pills. Of course, discuss this with your doctor before you make any changes like that. The third thing, decrease stress. Easier said than done, I get it. And we do know that chronic stress actually disrupts our normal microbiome. The fourth thing, take a look at this. Bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowth, even parasitic overgrowth. These are obviously disrupting your microbiome, so it is definitely something to consider. All right, we just covered what we want to cut out. Let's cover what we may need to add in. Probiotics and prebiotics to feed those probiotics. And digestive enzymes, also really important that your body is digesting food properly and getting the nutrients out of those foods that it requires. And another thing to consider, stomach acid. What is the level of that? We want to be sure our stomach is acidic enough to be digesting food. Also, fermented fruits and vegetables. These types of foods are rich in probiotics and fantastic for your microbiome. How about turmeric? We know that that's got anti-inflammatory qualities in it. Or how about aloe vera? Did you know that that's got anti-inflammatory properties? How about foods rich in antioxidants and polyphenols, all cell protective? So in essence, be cognizant of what you are feeding your body. Whole foods preferably. Stay away from the high sugar diets and be sure you're getting fiber-rich foods in your diet as well. All right, it's time to talk plexus. Let's talk plexus and how plexus can play a role in keeping our microbiome healthy. The first thing, always the first thing, TRIPLEX. So let's start with the Slim. We know that the Slim is their cornerstone product for a reason. It's gonna help with blood sugar stability, cellular inflammation, and it's gonna help with gut health. The ProBio 5 premium probiotic strains to repopulate our gut, and there are also digestive enzymes in there as well. And the third thing in that TRIPLEX, the BioCleanse. For many reasons, but when we're talking about our thyroid actually needs magnesium to produce thyroglobulin. And if you remember from earlier, thyroglobulin protein is what is required for our bodies to manufacture T4. All right, the next thing, the ease capsules. We know the ease is used for discomfort, for poofiness, for all of these things that we're talking about that we want to control in our body as a whole. The next one, X Factor or X Factor Plus. It's got these polyphenols in it, antioxidants. It's a fully methylated vitamin with aloe vera. And because this vitamin is bioavailable, our body knows what to do with it and it can absorb it completely. And the last thing we're gonna touch on today, METABURN. METABURN is all about adrenal support. So when we talk about the stress hormone, these cortisol levels, that's all tied into there as well. That's all our adrenals. All right, you guys, thanks for hanging with me till the very end. And if you are new to this plexus training, you have no idea what I am talking about, I'm gonna list in that description box my link. Get on there, nose around, ask me some questions. Curiosity will get you on this train every time. I'm also gonna include some videos I've done in the past in the description box to check out some of the products I've talked about today and see some of the playlists that we have going. I'm also gonna include the current playlist we have right here in the pink. You could be able to catch a couple more episodes of that as well. And you just might wanna join me here again next week because what happens in the gut does not stay in the gut. It affects everything, which is gonna lead into many more episodes of In the Pink.